Welcome to the Predictive World series brought to you by SalesChoice, which specializes in ending revenue uncertainty for human advantage. I'm your host, Jen Yim. I'm the Director of Product and Marketing here at SalesChoice, and we have three services powered by our AI platform. We've got Sales Insights, which helps sales professionals with guided insights, Mood Insights, which connects frontline voices to leadership, and third is our AI and data science as a service, where we design, build, and maintain AI models with a new focus on generative AI. Over the years, we've been hosting numerous experts and thought leaders on AI and revenue growth, and we built a trove of podcasts, webinars, white papers, and more. And I invite our listeners to go to saleschoice.com/resources to check that out. Today, I have with us Shiva Jayaraman. Shiva, I know you're a prolific builder. You've built many kinds of machines for a living, from Caterpillars or Caterpillar 7EB dumpsters, is that it? And to growth units, which you've scaled to billions of dollars, to artificial intelligence. So, Shiva, can you tell us a bit more about your journey?
No, love it, love it. Thank you for Jen for having us, and thank you, Cindy. Yeah, started off with 773B dumper, Caterpillar 773B dumper. It's one of the best things that I did as if you're a 22-year-old, you're building a machine
Wow.
that's probably 30 foot tall, and end to end, you build it right from reading the engineering drawings to machining it, to honing it, and to kind of assembling it, fabricating it, assembling it. It's the best thing. So yes, thank you, and happy Friday. Listen, I had the opportunity of recognizing that I'm a builder. That started off with building machines. I just love to build stuff. Built a testing practice, software testing practice, and grew into a billion-dollar practice. Again, it is clearly the company that I was working for was on a 8x growing spree, and therefore naturally I happened to be in the right place in the right time, and also built growth units across 13 countries in Europe, transforming countries. Right, these are countries from Netherlands and France and major countries and minor countries like the Nordic countries and whatnot. Truly understanding the culture and transforming these countries into a large scale thinking in terms of growth, from being a staffing or staff augmentation, project-based selling, to large deal thinking and transformational deal making, right? So I had the opportunity of doing that. And lastly, right before joining Centific about a year back, I happened to have the chance to build a consumer and health growth unit for a company as well from ground up, with close forging about, I want to say 30 plus, more than 30 plus new partnerships, almost on an average basis every year, with consumer goods and retail, life sciences, healthcare companies, which is when the advent of AI truly started to kind of disrupt the world. And I thought I should be in a company that has the ability to do the disruption. Centific clearly was one of the companies that I was tracking. They happened to, that time, they happened to help OpenAI and Amazon, Bedrock, Rufus, etc., to help towards helping them to kind of bring their foundational models to the marketplace. So that's why I joined Centific about a year back. I am a huge fan of young adults, helping young adults and minority women and turning them into digital entrepreneurs. I serve in boards of universities, boards of nonprofit organizations towards helping young adults and minority women and transforming them into micro entrepreneurs. So that's my background. I live in Dallas. Love to be here.
That's an amazing breadth. Could you also tell us a little bit about Centific specifically?
Yeah. So Scientific, if I were to use 30 to 60 seconds, is a frontier AI data foundry, which does two things. We help foundational AI companies with generating frontier AI data for them, whether it is sourcing this data ethically, whether it is creating synthetic data, also offering data from our off-the-shelf data store, right? Two, helping enterprise AI companies towards helping them create their models. So it's essentially scaled data for frontier AI and scaling models, right? That's all we do. And our Foundry helps with both the data part and model fine tuning. So we help with unstructured data, curating the data, and also generating and sourcing data. We help with training data sets, and we also help with fine-tuning models, right? And along with it, we have built multitude of pipelines. And these are pipelines to do stuff like harm grading, hallucination testing, RAG evaluation, purple teaming, red teaming, reinforcement learning. And we have about 1.8 million experts on our platform by verticalized experts. These are experts in the field of, say, consumer goods, retail, life sciences, finance, STEM, contracting, etc. Right? And these experts essentially help fine-tune the models. Right? Once we get the models through our Foundry and they get to a level of precision, you really need humans to further train the model and fine-tune the model and provide the feedback in the loop. So we call it the human in the loop feedback. And so that's the kind of company that we are. We have about 150 plus data scientists, PhDs in our company, and we are across 4 continents, and all the Magnificent Seven customers are our client. Companies are our clients, and we also have top-notch enterprise clients, including the number one retailer in the world, and so on.
Very impressive. I'm going to turn it over to our Dr. Cindy Gordon to start the conversation.
Thanks, Jennifer and Shiva. So thrilled that you're here with us. I wish I was sitting beside you and, I don't know, having a cup of tea or
Yes.
coffee or something else. But obviously, in your panoramic travels, what do you think in terms of what you've learned from your recent leadership role? And as you come into the AI Data Foundry, obviously you've got tremendous depth of operational capability, right? You've got incredible scientists, you've got reach, but obviously in your growth mandate, you're going to be looking about what's working, what's not working, to advance and grow even more significantly. So what are the 3 insights that you've learned to date? And I know it hasn't been a long time, but you're going to have some observations, whatever you're comfortable to share, that might be helpful.
No, it's a very insightful question. Therefore, it requires a little bit of pondering, Cindy. But I will tell you, clearly one is, and it may sound like a cliche, but really pivoting fast. More so in this new world. While the world of erstwhile change management, I call it the change experience. You have to you inflict a change or introduce a change, then you kind of manage the change, then you go through a phase of stabilization before you introduce the next change. That's the world that most of us lived in. We can't afford that anymore. It is going to be a constant world of continuous disruption and continuous evolution, and in very short sprints. And that, I think, all of us, and nobody is immune to that, right? All of us have learned to do that. So pivoting fast is going to be critical. Every company that is going to pivot fast, and that could include sometimes cannibalizing your own revenue, which is something that we do sometimes, and we cannibalize our revenue. It is otherwise cannibalization of general competitors' revenue. That has to happen. Those are honestly not too comfortable spaces to be in, but unless we do it, you will become extinct, right? So pivoting fast would be one strong insight that I've gathered over the. In fact, there is about a couple of months that we pivoted slightly slowly and we lost out on the marketplace, right? So pivoting fast is critical. Number 2 is, since you have the sales choice on the top right of your shoulder, for growth individuals, for growth-minded sales professionals, they got to become T-shaped or I-shaped professionals. What I mean by that is, you could have mostly sales professionals, they have a breadth of knowledge across multitude of things, but they got to develop a strong domain in terms of the depth that I call the T-shaped professional. You have a breadth of knowledge, but you have an expertise. That could be, hey, I have an expertise in RAG. I have an expertise in prompt engineering. It could be anything. And then it is also a broad set of verticals, right? Either you could be a T-shaped professional or an I-shaped professional that gives you the ability for sustainable evolution of your career, right? That's a second insight that I gather, because generic sales professionals are going to find it really, really hard in this new world, right? You got to have that technical domain. You got to have the vertical domain strength. That's the second insight that I would say. And the third insight is clearly a very open-minded, broad stroke thinking to begin with, and quickly narrowing down to solve a business problem, right? That is going to be, it's almost like I use this analogy of you dive deep into the ocean and you collect your pearls and you quickly come back up and string it into a necklace, right? That kind of an ability to dive deep, quickly gather details and come back and solving a very specific problem which with clear articulation. That kind of a skill is going to be required for every professional in every other organization, I would imagine, right? To kind of put it into a pragmatic sense is you can't be doing too much of blue sky thinking for too long, because then it would be paralysis in this generative AI world. At the same time, you understand the art of possible and quickly narrow down to doing an MVP, right? And how quickly you spin off an MVP. This is one place that Centific does really well. We are not having the regular bane of most companies which are stuck in pilots. We have found out a knack of moving away from pilots and being able to do MVPs that allows you to scale faster. The reason is our Foundry allows you to create domain-based models which customers can run their inferencing on very quickly and get their use cases off the shelf, right? So those are the three broad insights, Cindy.
So Shiva, just to clarify maybe one of the points, you're really thinking about the distillation and the speed. There certainly has been quite a bit of discussion on critical thinking, right? And and you're also adding the dimension of precision. I'm just going to say precision thinking.
Yeah.
And they're also the agility dynamic of moving to results, but also the curiosity to go up to the next breath of air, maybe to collect another pearl, maybe it's a different color, right? And so as you look across your talent base, how big is the gap of the right skills that you need based on what you've just articulated, with the kind of new sales enablements to really drive the solutioning that you
So the
see?
gap, I'll tell you, I'll reflect on myself with that question. You do this very tactfully, Cindy. Thank you for doing that, because it's a vulnerable thing that I'll do. Honestly, in the last 2 years, right before I joined Centific, I've been trying to get my hands around all of the deep expertise when it comes to data and models. And I was able to do it to some extent. Any amount of immersive reading doesn't let you necessarily, like, think about it, right? You could be an immersive learner. You could be a sandbox learner. You could be a learner that could watch and learn, right? You could be a theater learner. You could be an immersive learner, theater learner, or a sandbox learner. I think the first thing is to determine what kind of a learner are you. There are folks like my son, they're very good in immersive learning, and they know how to kind of quickly reskill themselves through immersive learning. There are folks that I know of who usually like to watch and learn, right? They either do through a media, I call them the theater learners. You watch through and you learn because that's the way of learning. It's audio, video. But there are sandbox learners who have to put their hands on and learn. That's the only way that they get to do the pragmatic learning. I know that I belong to the third type, right? And which is why I had to make a huge pivot in my career to say, listen, from running a large vertical in a multi-billion-dollar organization to be able to join a growth-centric organization like Centific, that's a huge pivot for me. And I had to make the pivot to enhance that learning, right? And those are, so in terms of gap, I had a huge gap. I knew that. And that is the only way that I could fill that gap. And over the last 8 months, somebody asked me, how is it going, right? And I told them it is an university of learning. That is how it felt for the first 6 months being here in Centific. So I think the gap could be taller or wider, depending on where you are, in which role you are, because you got to run your current role sometimes, and you got to have that transfer value of learning new things. And that is usually not usually said said easily than done, right? So I do think the gap is wider. And in fact, after I joined, I had to refresh my entire sales team.
Yeah.
And it's a good thing, right? There are folks that we sat down and said, listen, this probably is not the right place for you, right? You are an amazing sales professional. You seem to have a seasoned sales experience, but without this technical depth, it is going to be hard for you to sustain and grow. It's not going to be fun, right? Unless if it is not fun coming on a Monday morning, if I call it the Sunday night test. If you wake up on a Sunday night, if you don't feel like waking up for Monday morning, it's not the best place to work at, right? So we have to make those choices and refresh a team. I would say the skill gap could be wider and taller depending on where you are, Cindy.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a really interesting discussion, right? Because at the speed of iterations that we're seeing kind of brings us to the next point, and I'm kind of just going to switch the conversation to obviously maybe just talk about the agentic AI perspective, right? Of everything's going to be interconnected with AI enablements and data flows and optimizations. How deep do you think we're really going to go? One perspective is AI will be under every single core business process where there's high data volumes. Others are, we're going to be able to reduce our workforce by at least 30%, as a result of, finding highly routine little aspects. And then you add on the robots are coming. And I was just watching a funny movie briefly last night, and I thought, okay, half of the humans won't be needed. But how far do you think we're going to head in AI under every core business process? I know it's top of mind right now with a lot of executives. And how far should they go? Should they go? What are your thoughts?
I remember a popular president once said, technology is not about uh, if it can do it, but should we do it, right? That's a quote that stuck with me. I think it is purposeful AI that we all have to go after, right? How purposeful? And so, with that kind of a lead, let me kind of share one or two or three insights about this, right? Because I think I'm sure all of us are thinking about it. And in fact, when I'm serving these boards of universities, there are students who come up to me and ask me, what should I study? Right? And I pause, and there's this young man came and said, listen, I've gotten a computer science, bachelor's in computer science engineering, and I also have the ability to do biology. What should I pick? Right? And the answers, honestly, Cindy, a year before, my answer would have been different than what it is today, right? Because the curriculum, the universities that have not kept up to the new age of AI, if they're going to be teaching you computer science, you're going to be learning stuff that's not bad. There's nothing wrong in learning stuff, but you're learning history. If you're learning certain technologies that are outdated and they are not valid anymore, you're probably learning history, which is not a bad thing. But you're not going to be current and adept and useful to the new world in a way that you think you are going to be, right? So I generally think that the world of agentic AI is actually here in certain business scenarios. So let's actually break it down. Because this word is abused word, right? We all use the word agentic AI. Let me tell you how I perceive, in my own words, this agentic AI. So in about 18 to 24 months from now, I have a strong thesis that models are going to become commodities. There's going to be a multitude of models. It's almost like you can pick and choose. They are commodities. Compute is going to become affordable, right? You're going to probably even have a GPU on your hand, right? Compute is going to be affordable. Models are going to be a commodity. Then what is left? It is data and engineering. How do you take an end-to-end business scenario? Think of a scenario. It could be an order to cash, a procure to pay, or a travel, booking a flight, any end-to-end business scenario that you can think of. What is going to happen is you're going to have the domain expertise, and then you're going to take multitude of models and have the ability to stitch these models. In our platform, we have the ability to spin models. That's one biggest advantage that Centific Foundry has. We can take customers' unstructured data, and we can, whenever a customer wants especially an enterprise wants a custom model, we can take we have a domain-centric models. For example, if you want a model for contract management, we have spent research and development in creating a model in our Foundry. All that we would do this, we'll go to a customer, give us your data on-prem if you want, we'll put it there. We can actually run inferencing, and quickly in 2-3 weeks, while it would take 6 months, we'll probably spin up a model in 2-3 weeks. These models, you take these models, that could be a model to extract something. It could be a model to process invoices. It could be you take all of these models and you stitch them. And then you have the right kind of a data that needs to go. If your data is garbage, everything else is going to be useless, right? You have the ability to curate your data, push the data through these models, and then these models have to be interfaced into enterprises' technology stack, right? Enterprises are still going to have 32 different ERPs. Large enterprises do. Data is going to reside in different places. There is going to be different systems. How do you engineer these models into those systems? And then you create an end-to-end agentic workflow or an end-to-end agentic experience. That's what I think of an agentic experience. So there are 4 things that has to come to life in this agentic experience. Very, very, very high quality frontier AI data. Easily said, we all know enterprises struggle with it. Your data has to be super high quality data. Then well customized models that are built for purpose. Then how do you engineer them with reduced friction? And how do you put it on a compute that gives you scalability and operability, right? That to me is agentic experience. And therefore, coming to your question, go ahead, sorry, Cindy, go ahead.
No, just finish your point.
So therefore, coming to the question that you had, which is agentic experience is here, and we are going to see wherever there is transactional, wherever it is contextual, agentic experience already is here. It is when it comes to judgmental work, right, where human minds are required. Like recently, we were working with a top 4 consulting firm. They were talking about replacing their CPAs, right, by taking all of their audit books and creating a custom model. And we all were together saying, well, the transactional and contextual part of it could necessarily be automated by AI, but there's a long form thinking with when it comes to judgmental piece of work, which is hard at this point in time for AI to replace. We may encroach those corridors in near future. But that's my current view of agentic AI, Cindy.
Yeah. I really like the point you talked about purpose-led decisions, right? And to really be thinking clearly through, the entry point and the expansion point. I think with everything that's going on, that reflection of purpose is a really key message for everyone here. Now, on the purpose side of things, you think you well know what happened in Paris. I think you and I were talking about in pre-planning this call, right? Where we're the only, and obviously India, Prime Minister did some amazing, and I think actually it's being hosted in India next year, if I recall, not in Paris. But the key thing here is that on internationally, we do not have uh, formalized legislation for guidance. It's much like the airline industry, right? Took years and years to actually get the right protocols in place that had the safety standards, so that all these models, eventually can connect country to country with some guidelines. And what are your thoughts there? And how long do you think it's going to take? Right now we don't have international legislation. We don't have harmonization in many, many countries. And at the same time, there's good ethical guidelines and principles that people are really astutely aligned now, I think, actually, in most of the geos. But the regulation side is the gap. And what we're seeing now in North America is definitely is the regulators are picking up the teeth, I'd say, versus the legislators at a sort of federal or governmental level. But what are your thoughts here in terms of, is it holding us back for innovation resilience? Are you finding that people are moving at the fast and the speed to enable things, or just would love your perspectives. Is it two steps forward and then there's a slowdown when it starts to move to production because people haven't spent the time thinking things through. But any dynamics that you're seeing?
See, safe AI, we have in our Foundry, we have a safe AI studio. It's very important, right? When you um, deploy these models at scale, in one of the enterprises that we work with, a $120 billion um, home improvement retailer, um, and the models are put into production, we almost have to submit a report to their legal counsel, and they review, and before the models go into because you never know, right? The kind of safety and security, the bias that these models hold today. We have pre-written prompts, multiple thousands of prompts in our Foundry that we usually drive to make sure that the AI that we deploy is safe at scale. That's a very, very, very important component for us, especially when we have worked with the Magnificent Seven companies, all of their models that goes into production and everything. If something happens, the consequences are irreparable sometimes, right? Including for the enterprise and for the a broader community of individuals. So it is very critical. It is the most scariest part sometimes for enterprises, and even for you and me, right? It is always, we are beginning to compromise safety for convenience. Think about it. Every time something is convenient for you, there is a compromise of safety that you begin to do, whether it is an online shopping, even when it was, it's always convenient. But there is a little bit of safety. You begin to think in your mind, am I compromising safety? Or if you are putting yourself out there in social media, there's a little bit of compromise of safety. So I think that fine balance between convenience and safety is going to continuously evolve. As far as political and government tensions and in the world and social governmental regulations and everything, that's going to be a hard one, Cindy, right? Uh, and one can easily imagine that there's going to be at some point in time there's going to be a global set of standards and everything, right? Which like there's always a GDPR that came up. There is a Euro standards that came up. One can imagine that's going to evolve, but it is quite an AI war that is going on today between countries, right? Between countries, and some companies, they just sell fear to their governments to say, well, the other government is going to beat you up, right? So you probably want to be there. They're actually selling fear to forward their own agenda, and rightfully or wrongfully, right? But my point is, ethical AI is critical. Even we have a board called Generative AI Board. We call it GAB. One of the board member is from a neurodiversity background with safe AI practices. We were very particular. This person is an ex-Stanford CDO, ex-NVIDIA CIO, and we purposefully had this person in our board to make sure that we get that level of coaching and kind of guidance when we deploy AI at scale. So I know I didn't quite answer your question critically, but I think we are far from the ideal state when it comes to universal guidance. I'm sure there's going to be accreditation bodies that's going to come up. There are going to be standards that are going to evolve, and all of us need to stick to those standards. There are going to be watermarks that are going to evolve for determining fake AI and all of that. So I think there's multitude of things. It's almost like, you release the product, you got to get that emblem of assurance of safe AI before you put it out in the market. I think it's going to be out there.
Yeah, I do agree that, there will be multiple certification verifications that they're following sort of some broader constructs, which are well understood, right? And I think it really behooves all of us who are building solutions to ensure that we don't wait for, all of the level of clarity, because it is going to be a long time. But there's enough, I think, guidance that's out there. If you follow the EU to the letter, you might recognize that some innovation resilience is, being impacted there. And I think being very alert to the geos that you're selling into is really critical, right? Because they're all going to move at some different rates, right? So knowing your market and is pretty important. And your lawyers, I think, and are probably really good friends to have these days as well. Now let's change the
I want to add one more thing. It is so true. We have a product called, in the gamut of language AI, we have a product called Flow, which comes out of our Foundry. What Flow does is it can take your, if, say, for example, you are a pharmaceutical company, you are releasing a drug into 30 different markets, which is 35 different languages. And what Flow does is has the ability to take basic machine translated text, and it kind of does an automatic scoring of how well it is benchmarked to the local statutory standards, colors, because some colors are not conducive for some localities, and the language is not contextual. A language that is completely acceptable in a particular part of the world is super offensive and sometimes even not compliant to the local standard. So we have a product that we have put in the marketplace of few hyperscalers, which essentially does that across 230 plus locales. And with the hit of a button, it has the ability to kind of score how well your translations are, and it kind of says these are all the areas that needs to be fixed. And we have experts, like I told you, the 1.8 million experts. They are fed into it to do post editing. They kind of edit it from those locales, from those 230 plus locales. It could be someone from Vienna or someone from Vietnam. They actually fix it and then they release it to the marketplace, right? And it's super important. Going back to what you were saying, is those, imagine a gaming. We work for a large one of those Magnificent Seven to help them with that in the gaming space. In gaming space, it's super critical. Some of the languages are offensive, statutorily is a bad language, or the color is wrong, the pattern is wrong, the signages are inappropriate. All of those things we do. This is pragmatically how we are trying to solve for it, but hopefully we'll have a holistic way of solving for things in future, Cindy.
Yeah, and I love the product name Flow, right? And also the recognition of the variances that we have in human discourse, human language, and cultural context. You also said some key things. Just want to make sure our viewers understand this point about um, not all of the context is there and visible in the data sets, right? And not to underestimate the amount of tacit knowledge that we have as humans that's not codified. And that's the area, then you add on the cultural context of meaning, and it's an entire other. So it's going to take time, for these large language models to evolve. And I was speaking to a chief risk officer actually this morning, and we were just talking about the deceptiveness that still can be inherently in the LLMs, and more from the perspective. Then we said, well, my goodness, if you trained on everything in the global web, it's all in all the history books, right? There's so much deceptiveness in stories. So of course, it would inherently pick up some of those risks. And, so we had a good giggle on that earlier. Okay, let's go to the next kind of probe, which, is an interesting one. Even in the financial a post, and I should say, it was the Financial Times. It came out in New York. I think it was just yesterday, and had a big headline. We're not seeing the return on investment on AI, and then he was like, and you and I were talking about when we were planning this session that kind of the overall, uh, you know, sometimes you wonder how statistically valid these things, but right now it says in theory it's running around less than 5%. So people do curate the business model, I mean the business cases, like we're all sophisticated, right? There's always an ROI, in all these business cases. And then obviously you start to move out and you sustain. In some of the banks, we know that 80% of the models that get spun up aren't sustained. And low ROI, the Gartner Group's putting out new research shortly to show the dip. One of the things that you will have learned is obviously you're continuing to service accounts. So that says something, right? You are, because people, they don't continue to do business if they're not seeing a return, right? So just what are your perspectives on, what's real or just sheer fiction here, written in the what you're
Yeah.
experiencing?
Again, we look at the world into two parts, foundational AI and enterprise AI, and which is why we coined this term called zero distance innovation, because we are right in the middle between foundational AI customers and enterprise AI, and we are trying to see if we can narrow down that gap of innovation. Right? The reason that I brought that is foundational AI world looks at ROI differently than the enterprise AI world. So for a second, let's kind of keep the foundation AI world outside of the scope, because the way that they think about things is, hey, I got to constantly innovate and bring in the newest models or newest innovations, and they have a long ROI sense, right? It is about existential crisis for some of them, and but they are not immune to it. I know of one of the Magnificent Seven clients who happen to have been a pioneer in bringing one of these models out in the marketplace. They're actually after operational efficiency now, because they are like, well, my models are, the amount of innovation that I put in, they are not giving me returns yet, right? I'm sure they are going to go through that, but it's slightly longer in nature. Let's talk about enterprises. These are companies that are producing chocolates, or selling beer, or selling apparels. These are companies. Technologies is not what they sell. They sell stuff, right? Unlike foundational AI customers who sell technology, these guys sell stuff, right? And for them, the ROIs cannot, long-term ROIs don't really cut it. So the way that, we are recently working with a company, and the kind of value prop that we had for them is save, innovate, and transform. It is a staffing company. Think of a company that produces staffing solutions in public spaces. And we told them, listen, you actually have staffing solutions, including in public spaces. They have video camera monitoring, etc. We told them, today you just staff people to do stuff and monitor stuff. And they have a finance and accounting, human resources, logistics, back office operations. We told them, listen, that is when you remember I told you transactional, contextual, and judgmental. Much of that work is transactional, contextual. We told them, listen, we could actually completely transform that work through generative AI. That could give you 60% efficiency in a very short term. Over the next 3 years, you will save millions. Take that money, put it into innovating your workspace, be it hospitals, be it airports, be it public, in retail spaces. Kind of when you're having these cameras taking feed, or when you are having capturing these forms that needs to be in multiple languages across 220 locations, we said, listen, create insights out of that. That today you are not doing that, right? We will give you algorithms, we'll give you models that allows you to create insights that would provide value to your customers. When you do that, you have transformed your company from a staff providing company to an insights company. When you do that, the valuation of your company becomes multiple X. That's a value proposition. It has to be very pragmatic, meaningful. For them to innovate, for these enterprises to put money into innovation, you got to give them a self-funded innovation. They have to take money out of somewhere, right? And when you look at low-hanging fruits that are transactional or contextual in nature, automate them, get money out of that, and allow them to put it back into innovating their company and transforming the company, then it becomes a pragmatic story.
Yeah,
Sometimes,
for sure, for sure. I
sometimes
guess
it is.
anyways, sorry, finish your point.
Oh, you go ahead.
No, it's just I immediately had the flash in my brainwave that said flow, right? We're really talking about, you've got a confined set of space, and you're now basically talking about how you can change the flow to actually create more, capacity and, momentum for growth, and just to be very, very, but you're absolutely right. There's people are working within their existing realities, and they need to be able to see capture. I think one of the other pieces, though, is the art of the long view, because you and I both know an ROI in 12 months can be very, very hard for enterprises within an AI context. And, so I would love you to close off with your perspective on the future AI trends that you're seeing as you're looking out, because obviously we've talked a lot today, right? We've talked about the requirement to upskill the talent in relationship to that's needed, and you reclarified that some of the technology depth that's needed, certainly in your organization to sell, but also I think that amplifies out to all future sales professionals where we all know technology mindsets, being able to break things apart, have that agile thinking, critical thinking, being able to go down, find those pearls and bring them up to have solutions, but at the same time to have the dexterity to unbox and rebox, so to speak. But what do you see if you had to say, 2 to 3 key things looking ahead, um, that think everybody needs to be very alert to?
Yeah, so I think taking off from the previous point of ROI, there's also an extension into return on experience and return on safety, right? Especially, think of retail crimes or public crimes. Those places, it is not about return on investment because we serve that space very, very extensively. Therefore, in those places, it is return on safety. And then there are companies like we introduced a large shopping agent, multi-turn conversational AI shopping agent. It is about return on experience, right? So it cannot be forgotten that these enterprises do value experience and safety a lot, right? So that is important outside of ROI. In terms of futures, I just want to kind of, I'm thinking, right? I'm chuckling as I speak. I almost thinking about next 5 years, Cindy, maybe 5 to 7 years. The amount of email writing that we do probably will get completely reduced. We probably will send audio notes or video notes, is what I'm thinking, right? If you want to make a very impressive communication, you'll probably send a video note, and otherwise it is an audio because the computer is all there to compute these things, right? These are heavy files. There's going to be sufficient compute. And why write an email? I'll probably send an audio note to you, and the AI will summarize that note in a short term, and you will kind of see, as you receive it, you say, that's what's in this. But if you really are interested, you're going to click on it, and it's going to play it for you, and you will return with an audio note, right? I'm just, like I said, I'm chuckling when I think about it. That's quite possible, right? And the reason that I mentioned that is physical AI is where we are all heading to, which is you when you drive when you do a self-driving car, the entire, it's on the edge, right? When you look at your phone, the AI is on the edge. It is not on a cloud, it's on this edge, right? So I think the physical AI, and you spoke about robots, Internet of Things, how do you kind of how manufacturing floors are going to be transformed, be it around inspections or deviations and compliance and regulations and all that, right? Or in a healthcare, when patient engagement happens wearing body cams, or how do you ensure compliance in health? All of this is going to be very physical driven AI. I think one of the futuristic trend from agentic AI moving into is physical AI. I think compute is going to allow you to do that, and more and more, I think there's going to be sophistication as long as the security and safety aspect of that is not compromised. You and I spoke about that, right? So I think it is even hard to predict future, Cindy, because think about it. If we had sat down and did that an year and a half before, and if we were to go back and watch that recording, we would be totally wrong. No, we wouldn't have predicted certain innovation that came about in the last 18 to 24 months that wouldn't have been part of a prediction. I think that is partly the most fascinating thing. The amount of disruption that is happening is almost unpredictable, and which goes back to the point that I had. Therefore, the only way to stay abreast is to be super agile and pivot fast. And as long as you can do that and have that ability of have that curiosity and critical thinking and depth-centric profile and persona, then I think you're going to be on. You're going to have a lot. We are going to have a lot of fun.
Yeah. I think this is a really good way to close out because, uh, life is on a speed dial. It is the blur reality. It's not going to slow down. And the fact that you need to constantly be learning is, I think, a really key point that, every organization needs to recruit and develop people to understand. For them to be relevant, they've got to be unlearning. I'm not going to say on a daily basis, but definitely unlearning a lot of things on an annual basis, right? just because to keep up. And cultures have to really create that those support systems so that their talent, can be adaptive and bring the skills for, the continual dynamics of AI moving out, highly routine work and hopefully purposeful work in the sense that, so humans can unleash more potential and also then innovate. They'll have more capacity to think of new ways of doing things or bringing new capabilities to market. But thank you so much, Shiva. It's always great to
I have a
be with
question
you.
for you. What
Yeah.
was that movie that you said you were watching last night? You said
Well, I was watching, I watched one is called The Ugly Robot, which was really quite interesting. The new one, it just came out on Netflix, and I'll loop back, but it's essentially about how robots have taken over the world, and they've just finished a world war on robots, and humans are now back in control, but they've set up this large neural link infrastructure with, imagine, all of our brains connected. And so I haven't finished it, but I can't remember the name because I just literally started to watch it.
I actually I was flying back. Right? Last night I landed from a long flight back from Singapore, right? And I was watching this movie called Afraid, AFRAID,
Oh, okay,
right?
afraid.
So it's a very interesting movie. It is that movie, for those of us who have not watched it, it is all about training data sets.
Oh, interesting. Oh, I have
Yes,
to
and it
watch
is
that.
actually a very gripping movie. I recommend
Oh.
a watch.
Yeah, well, I've got that flight to New Zealand on Monday morning, so I'm definitely going to be, leveling up. But I'll loop back on the other. But I think, just in the future of AI may well reside in the movies that we watch. So, um, okay, Jennifer, I'm going to turn it back to you to close out.
Sounds good. And thanks, Shiva, for joining us today. And I invite our listeners to head back to saleschoice.com/resources for more and join us next time for more insights on the AI world.